You ever have one of those nights where everything just feels still? The kind of night where the world outside your window turns white and quiet, like it's holding its breath? That was Jake's evening. Nothing special, just him, wrapped in a blanket, zoning out in front of some rerun cooking show. Half asleep, half awake, the kind of peaceful boredom we all sometimes crave. And then, bang, bang, bang. The pounding on his front door hit like a gunshot, loud, relentless, shaking his tiny apartment to the bones. At first, Jake thought maybe he imagined it. Maybe it was the wind. But then came the voice. A woman's voice. Clear. Human-sounding. Urgent. Please, let me in. Now, pause with me for a second. What would you do? It's a blizzard outside, visibility near zero, you live alone, it's late, and someone you've never heard before is begging to come in? Jake froze, staring at the door like it had just threatened him. This wasn't a knock-your-door-for-sugar situation. This felt off. Another knock, faster this time, desperate. Human, please. Wait, human? That's not how people usually talk. Jake's heart kicked into high gear. His brain ran through all the possibilities. Drunk neighbor, weird prank, TikTok stunt, maybe even some creepy home invasion tactic. Then came the sound that made the hairs on his neck stand straight up. A thud, like someone collapsing. That did it. He edged toward the door, cautious but curious. Against every better instinct, he cracked it open, and that's when everything stopped making sense. Standing there, shivering uncontrollably, was a woman, barefoot, soaked in half-melted snow, wrapped in what looked like a stolen IKEA shower curtain. But the weirdest part, her skin was blue. Not cold blue, not makeup blue, I mean rich, luminous midnight blue, like velvet under moonlight. Her eyes golden, glowing, unblinking, locked on his with a look of desperation that went straight to his gut. Oh, and she had a tail. Yeah, a tail. For a second, Jake couldn't breathe. I mean, what do you even do in that moment? Close the door and pretend it never happened? Call someone? Scream? Pass out? But all she did was gasp through chattering teeth. I am a very dedicated cosplayer. Congratulations, human! You've uncovered my secret. Jake snorted. A defense mechanism, probably. Humor is great when the universe goes off script. But even then, even through the sarcasm, he knew. She wasn't kidding. Her name was Laura Vinn, and she wasn't from around here. At this point, Jake's brain was just trying to catch up. Blue skin, glowing eyes, space shower curtain. She was cold, dangerously cold, and still cracking jokes. That somehow made her more real, not less. And you know, as wild as it sounds, maybe you've had moments like that too. Not aliens showing up on your porch, obviously, but moments when reality takes a hard left and you're stuck between fear and fascination. When you don't know what's happening, but your gut tells you this is real and it matters. Jake felt that. She told him her ship had crashed nearby. She hadn't accounted for Earth's winters. Her planet, wherever it was warmer, a lot warmer. She was literally freezing to death. And Jake realized he was now in charge of keeping an alien alive. Funny how life works, right? One minute you're watching chefs yell at each other over burnt risotto. The next minute you're sharing your blanket with a half-frozen extraterrestrial who may or may not have just crash-landed in your backyard. It's insane, it's unbelievable, and yet it happened. That night, Jake's world didn't just change. It expanded. He didn't know it yet, but this was the start of something big, bigger than snowstorms and survival, bigger than Earth even. Because Laura Vinn wasn't just some strange visitor. She was a sign that the universe was about to get a lot closer than we thought. You know that moment when something unbelievable happens, and instead of freaking out, your brain just goes, sure, okay, this is fine now? That was Jake, standing in his living room, watching a glowing-eyed alien woman curl up on his couch like this was just another Tuesday night. Her name was Laura Vinn, and yeah,
She was absolutely, 100%, undeniably not from Earth. She wasn't hiding it either. No half-hearted excuses, no cover story about a Comic Con gone wrong. The moment she could speak clearly through her shivering, she told him straight up. Her ship had malfunctioned mid-descent. She crash-landed nearby. And this blizzard, this peaceful little snowstorm Jake had been enjoying in flannel pajamas, it was killing her. Because where she's from, cold doesn't exist like this. Her physiology, her biology, everything about her was built for warmth. Think dry tropical climate, but on another planet, like if Venus had a spa day. And here's the thing, she was freezing, and fast. And Jake, the guy who still forgot to buy milk half the time, had just become her only shot at survival. Now let's stop right there for a second. Imagine you're Jake, a woman with shimmering blue skin, silver hair sticking to her face like wet silk, wrapped in a stolen shower curtain and barely able to speak, is sitting on your couch, and she's looking at you like she's her last lifeline. What would you do? Jake didn't exactly have a space heater built for aliens, but what he did have was body heat, and apparently that's what she needed. She told him, very matter-of-factly I might add, that her core temperature was still dropping. The thermostat wasn't enough. She needed direct thermal transfer from another living being. Translation, she needed to cuddle. Jake almost died. I mean, what do you even say to that? Sure, let me just grab a cup of tea and spoon the extraterrestrial on my couch. But here's the thing I love about Jake. He hesitated, sure, but only for a second, because deep down, he knew this wasn't about flirting or weird alien rituals. It was survival, and he wasn't about to let someone, anyone, freeze to death on his watch. So he sat beside her. And the moment their bodies touched, Laura let out this soft, involuntary sound. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just a little sigh. Relief in its purest form. Jake, of course, went full panic mode inside, because holy hell, she was cold. Like touched a metal doorknob in winter with your tongue kind of cold. Her skin felt almost artificial, like silk over ice. But beneath the chill, there was warmth fighting to return, like a pilot light barely hanging on. And honestly, that moment was kind of beautiful. Not in a romantic, slow-motion movie scene way, but in a real, human way. Because here was this strange, terrifying, wonderful being, trusting him completely, letting him hold her, relying on him, not as some interstellar savior, but just as a man, a guy with blankets and body heat and a half-functioning space heater. I don't know if you've ever had a moment like that, where everything slows down and it's just two people existing in the same fragile space. No expectations, no logic, just raw, instinctive connection. Jake felt that. And maybe Laura did too, because after a while, she relaxed. Her shivering faded, her breathing evened out, her tail, which, yes, still a thing, coiled lightly around her leg like a sleepy cat. She looked up at him and whispered her name again. Laura then. Not a threat, not an invader, just someone who is lost, freezing, and completely out of options. Now, here's where it gets more interesting. As they sat together under the blankets, Jake started to realize something both fascinating and terrifying. Laura wasn't just physically vulnerable to the cold, she was emotionally open in a way he hadn't expected. She didn't mask her confusion. She didn't pretend to be stronger than she was. She asked for help, not because she was weak, but because she trusted him. That hit different, especially for someone like Jake. He wasn't used to being needed like that, and definitely not from another planet. But here's what really stuck with me. Even in the middle of all this, alien crash landings, emergency cuddles, the weirdest Tuesday night in recorded history, Jake didn't run. He didn't freak out or push her away. He stayed. And maybe that's the real heart of this story. Not just that Laraven was an alien, not just that her ship went down in a storm, but that Jake showed up, fully, flawed and awkward and terrified, but present. Because sometimes showing up is all it takes to save a life. And in this case, it might have just saved two. Okay, so let's rewind for just a second. Imagine this. You let a freezing alien woman into your apartment during a snowstorm. She's blue-skinned, glowing-eyed, clearly not from Earth, but polite enough, freezing to death, and weirdly sarcastic for someone in a medical emergency. You do what any half-decent human would do. Throw every blanket you own over her, crank the heater, and when that's not enough, you share body heat. Now you're both sitting there, under a mountain of fleece, trying not to make eye contact because things are already strange enough. And for a while, it works. Her shivering slows, she breathes easier. There's this unspoken relief between you. Like, hey, we survived a weird thing together. Cool. But then the air changes. At first, Jake couldn't put his finger on it. Just a shift, like the atmosphere had thickened. The room felt warmer, not just physically, like something invisible had turned up the emotional volume without asking permission. The scent was the first clue. Not bad, actually kind of pleasant, subtle, sweet, warm in a way he couldn't describe but somehow made his skin feel too tight for his body. And then Lara shifted beside him, her movements slower, her posture different, like her whole nervous system had entered a different gear. That's when Jake asked, cautiously, "You okay?" Laraven, bless her alien heart, answered without flinching. "My body is responding," she said. "I did not anticipate this reaction." Jake blinked. Reaction to what? She looked him dead in the eyes and said calmly, "Their physiology releases pheromones in high temperatures. It is inconvenient." Oh no. You could actually see Jake's brain short-circuiting in real time. Because here he was, trapped in a sealed apartment during a blizzard with a stunning alien who was now, unintentionally, pumping the room full of biological, romantic tension gas. This is one of those moments where every instinct in your body wants to scream, "Nope!" But running outside into a snowstorm wasn't exactly an option, and opening a window would have been a death sentence for her. So Jake, trying not to combust, did what any slightly panicked man would do. He paced. He muttered to himself, debated building a makeshift hazmat suit out of Tupperware and duct tape, and considered the actual logistics of being seduced by alien chemicals, which, by the way, is not something you can Google. Trust me. And please don't. Your search history deserves better. Lara, for her part, was trying just as hard to stay calm. She kept her distance, she sat perfectly still, eyes half-lidded, breathing too measured like someone meditating through turbulence. You could tell this wasn't exactly comfortable for her either. Jake finally stopped mid-rant and said, "Okay, we need a plan." She didn't argue, just raised a brow, silently agreeing. And that's when it hit him. Cold shower. You need a cold shower. Now, if you've ever had to suggest a cold shower to someone you're desperately trying not to be attracted to during an alien pheromone emergency, I salute you. It's as uncomfortable as it sounds. But Lara nodded, her voice low and steady. "I believe that is logical." Jake all but sprinted to the bathroom. He adjusted the temperature, muttering to himself like a man on the edge, something about not dying of intergalactic awkwardness and this not being how he thought first contact would go. When he returned, Laura was standing just barely. Her balance was off, her skin flushed with that strange inner glow. Her tail twitched at odd intervals like it was reacting to something her body couldn't process. Jake offered his hand, trying not to make eye contact. "Let's go before either of us makes a decision we regret for the rest of Earth history." She didn't argue, just sighed and took his hand, her skin now burning compared to the ice she'd been earlier. They moved toward the bathroom in silence, both trying desperately not to acknowledge the deeply ridiculous intensity of the situation. And listen, this wasn't some flirty rom-com steam fest. There were no longing glances or accidental towel drops. Just two people from two different planets fighting off a biological mess with cold water and sheer willpower. Jake closed the door behind her and leaned against the hallway wall, trying to breathe. From inside, her voice floated out, softer now. "You handled that well, human." Jake laughed dryly. "Didn't feel like it." A pause, then teasing, "Mostly." He groaned and covered his face. "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that." She laughed. A real, light, unburdened laugh. And somehow that broke the tension more than any plan could have. By the time she stepped out of the bathroom, steam trailing behind her, the air had cleared, literally and figuratively. Her posture was relaxed, the heat from her skin no longer volatile. She looked better, calm. And Jake? He just stood there marveling at the fact that he'd survived his first alien encounter without spontaneous combustion. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it was human, messy, weird, strangely intimate, the kind of connection you don't walk away unchanged. And somewhere between the blizzard and the pheromones, Jake realized he wasn't just helping a stranger survive the night, he was starting to care.
So, picture this. You've just survived an alien cuddle emergency. The blizzard outside is finally quiet. The vibe inside? Calmer. No more shivering, no more accidental pheromone exposure. Just you, your couch, and the blue-skinned space visitor currently wrapped in your favorite hoodie like it's a sacred relic. Jake was doing his best not to spiral. And honestly, things had finally started to feel manageable. That fragile little illusion, it lasted exactly 11 seconds. Because just as he sat down to breathe for the first time that day, Lara Vin reached across the coffee table, picked up his water bottle, the one he had been drinking from earlier, and took a long sip. And look, it should have been nothing, right? People share drinks all the time. Movie dates, beach days, 2 straws, 1 milkshake, no big deal. Except, the second she set the bottle down, Lara froze. Like full body tension, glowing eyes wide, breath caught, not in a "that's refreshing" kind of way, more like "I just accidentally triggered a cosmic ritual" kind of way. Jake blinked. "What?" She stared at the bottle, then at him, then at the bottle again, and when she finally spoke, her voice was tight, careful, the way someone talks before giving you very bad news. "You drank from my vessel," she said. Jake squinted. "Your what?" She took a slow, bracing breath. In Vichar culture, sharing a drinking vessel is a sacred custom. A pause. "How sacred?" And that's when she hit him with it. Dead serious, no hesitation. It signifies acceptance of a life-mate bond. Jake's soul left his body. "I'm sorry, it what?" Now look, I don't care how open-minded you are, if someone tells you that you've just unknowingly married them by swapping sips from a water bottle, you're allowed 1 full minute of unfiltered panic. That's the law. Jake spiraled, hands in his hair, pacing, muttering to himself, "I didn't sign up for this. I was just being hydrated. I thought we were past the weird stuff." Lara, meanwhile, was surprisingly calm, possibly amused, which only made it worse. He pointed at her, desperate. "Are you saying I'm married to you now? Like, legally married? On your planet?" She tilted her head.
Not legally. Jake exhaled in relief. Thank God. Then she added, with the smuggest expression in the galaxy, culturally, yes. Cue emotional whiplash. Jake groaned so hard his ancestors probably felt it. No, 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 this is not happening. There should be a pamphlet, a warning label. Please do not share beverages with aliens unless prepared for eternal commitment. And Lara? She just smirked and took another sip of his water. I swear the woman was thriving on his emotional collapse. Jake flopped on the carpet face down like his entire dating life had just exploded. And maybe it had, because now he wasn't just the guy who let an alien sleep on his couch, he was the guy who had accidentally married her. Now, let's pause for a second. Have you ever done something completely innocent, like so small you didn't even think twice about it, and then learned after the fact that it carried way more weight than you realized? Maybe it was saying I love you too early in a relationship, or replying to a text with the wrong emoji and accidentally starting a 6-week situationship. Yeah, this was like that, but with aliens and implied lifelong vows. Jake, for all his sarcasm and flailing, eventually lifted his head and asked the only question that mattered. Are you joking? And Lara, still sipping his water, shrugged like it was the most casual thing in the universe. Only in the technical sense. Which, let's be honest, is the least reassuring answer possible. So now Jake didn't know if he was single, space-engaged, or one awkward cultural misunderstanding away from being introduced to her planetary elders. He sat up, defeated. This is my life now. This is who I am. The guy who accidentally married a woman from another star system because I forgot to buy a second water bottle. And you know what? Lara Vin laughed. Not a polite alien chuckle, not a sarcastic, you humans are absurd kind of laugh, a real one, the kind that starts low in your chest and bubbles up before you can stop it. It was the first time Jake had heard it, and despite everything, the snowstorm, the pheromones, the space marriage, he smiled. Because in that moment, it wasn't about chaos or misunderstanding or even fear. It was just two people, impossibly different, totally unprepared, learning how to exist in each other's orbit. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most human thing of all.
Sometimes it's the little things that bring us together. Not diplomacy, not shared language, not even saving someone from freezing to death in your living room. No, sometimes it's pizza. Jake, bless his earthling instincts, realized two things that night. One, his unexpected guest from another planet probably hadn't eaten in, well, whatever her version of days was. And two, if he was going to introduce Lara Vin to human culture, he might as well start with something that mattered. So he ordered pizza. A lot of it. Now, if you've ever been starving after a long day, or if you've ever had to explain to someone why melted cheese on bread can feel like a spiritual experience, you might relate to what happened next. 45 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Jake tossed some cash at the delivery guy, marched back into the living room like a man on a mission, and dropped the pizza box on the coffee table like it was the Rosetta Stone of Earth cuisine. "This," he said dramatically, "is pizza. Staple of our culture, possibly our greatest achievement right after indoor plumbing and Wi-Fi." Lara Vin tilted her head, intrigued but clearly skeptical. She leaned closer, her golden eyes narrowing as she inspected the greasy cardboard box like it might be booby-trapped. And then he opened it. The scent of warm dough, bubbling cheese, and pepperoni hit the room like a wave of home. Even if you're not hungry, pizza just does something. It's the smell of movie nights and college survival and Friday evenings after long, exhausting weeks. Lara picked up a slice with delicate fingers, holding it like it was some alien artifact, which to her she kind of was. She turned it over, studied it from every angle, then took one cautious bite. She froze, and then, quietly, reverently whispered, "By the stars." Jake watched, wide-eyed, as she chewed slowly, her expression shifting from curiosity to awe to something close to existential confusion. "This is divine. This is better than the nectar of the Zaire blossoms. I must bring this to my people." Jake burst out laughing. "I told you!" And in that moment, for just a beat, all the cultural barriers melted away. Because it didn't matter what planet you were from, some things are universally good. Like comfort food, like warm cheese on a cold night, like the way something simple can feel like salvation. But, of course, nothing stays simple for long. While Jake cleaned up the empty pizza box, Laura got curious. She had taken his phone, with permission technically, and was now scrolling through it like it held the secrets of human civilization, which in a way it did. Jake leaned over. "You're not reading my texts, are you?" She didn't look up. No. That wasn't reassuring. He peered closer, and his soul left his body. "Oh my God, tell me you didn't open Tinder!" Laura blinked, entirely unfazed. "I required information." "I almost choked. It is not a scientific journal, Laura." "It is a primitive selection system. Your species engages in mate evaluation through a process of visual confirmation and binary decision-making." It's more complicated than that." She turned the phone toward him. "This one claims to be built different. Does that imply genetic superiority?" Jake snatched the phone from her so fast he nearly sprained something. "Nope, absolutely not. We're deleting this app right now." Laura looked vaguely offended. "You are overreacting." "I am absolutely not. What if someone actually matched with you?" She raised an eyebrow. "I would conduct an assessment of their genetic material and determine compatibility." Jake dropped the phone. "You would what?" She smirked, joking. She was not joking. And Jake was absolutely not emotionally prepared for the idea of Laura Vinn, an actual extraterrestrial with combat training and glowing eyes, evaluating some guy named Brad from 3rd Street for reproductive viability. It was the kind of conversation that felt like a fever dream. One minute you're explaining pepperoni, the next you're trying to explain why swiping left on a guy holding a fish is not technically xenophobic. But here's the thing. Through all the chaos, the misunderstandings, the cultural whiplash, there was connection. It was awkward, it was hilarious, it was real. Because Laura Vinn didn't just want to survive on Earth, she wanted to understand it. And Jake, well, he was doing his best to help. One pizza slice and deleted dating app at a time. Maybe that's how it starts. Not with a universal translator or grand gestures, but with curiosity. With laughing at the same absurdities. With one alien woman looking at you and saying, "This is divine," about a greasy cheese slice. And in that messy, strange, beautiful in-between space, they weren't so different after all.
There's a strange kind of silence that comes after chaos, like the moment right after the storm passes, when the wind stops screaming and the world holds its breath. Jake was sitting in that kind of silence. The heater hummed softly. Laura Vinn, now warm, dry, and very much alive, had curled up on the couch, still wearing his oversized hoodie like it belonged to her now. For a few minutes, everything felt almost normal. But you know how sometimes, when things get too calm, your brain starts filling in the blanks? That's when the questions crept in. Jake turned to her, hesitant. "So, your ship, you said it malfunctioned?" Laura didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared out the window at the snow-covered rooftops, her golden eyes distant. "It didn't behave like a malfunction," she said finally, voice low. Jake sat up. "What do you mean?" She looked at him then, and something had changed in her face. That glimmer of sarcasm she usually carried around like a shield, it was gone. What was left behind felt colder than the storm. There was no damage, no impact, no warning. It was flying perfectly one moment, then everything shut down. Now, I don't know about you, but when someone who literally crash-landed from space tells you they don't think it was an accident, you listen. Jake did. His chest tightened. You think someone did this to you? Laura didn't answer first. Her fingers curled tighter around the blanket. When she finally spoke, her words were slow and careful. I do not believe it was random. That was the moment Jake's brain hit DEFCON 1. Because up until now, this had just been weird. Crazy, yes. Unbelievable? Absolutely. But containable. One lost alien, one stormy night, one pizza-induced spiritual awakening. But this sounded like the kind of thing that didn't end with cuddles and sarcasm. Jake leaned forward. So what? Someone sabotaged your ship to stop you from getting here or to bring you down? Laura looked at him then, and something in her face had changed. That glimmer of sarcasm she usually carried around like a shield, it was gone. What was left behind felt colder than the storm. She turned toward him fully now, eyes locking onto his. To save someone once is fortune, twice is duty. Where I come from, a life saved twice is a life guarded. Jake blinked. Wait, so you're my alien bodyguard now? Yes. She said it so plainly that it took a full 5 seconds for the words to hit. Wait, so you're saying because I let you in and stopped you from freezing, now you're responsible for my survival? Yes. And you're just okay with that? Laura tilted her head. It is law, sacred. It cannot be broken. Jake stared at her wide-eyed. You've got a lot of sacred traditions, you know that? I come from a very structured people. He let out a slow exhale, rubbing his hands over his face. This just keeps getting weirder. Laura didn't disagree. But here's the thing. Beneath all the confusion, something had shifted between them. Because for the first time since this whole night started, Jake realized he might be in danger now too. Not just because Laura had crashed, or because someone might be chasing her, but because whatever this was, whatever mission or secret or threat that brought her here, it wasn't done yet. And he was no longer just the guy who offered her a blanket and some pizza. He was in it. Laura seemed to sense the shift too. She looked at him a long moment before saying gently, You don't need to worry. I won't let harm come to you. And something in the way she said it, it didn't feel like bravado. It felt like a promise. Jake didn't know what was coming next. He didn't know if someone was out there, tracking her, or if they were already watching. But as he sat there, next to the alien woman now bound to protect him by ancient law and shared survival, he couldn't help but whisper, So what happens now? Laura's eyes flicked to the window again, snow still falling, quiet, peaceful for now. And she said, We find the wreck before someone else does. Suddenly, that silence outside didn't feel so safe anymore.
You ever wake up and feel like your whole life pivoted overnight? Like everything that used to make sense, the routines, the plans, the boundaries of what's possible just kind of dissolved while you slept? That was Jake. The sun wasn't even up yet, but his world had already changed. Yesterday, he was a regular guy, watching cooking shows in his pajamas, just trying to survive the snowstorm. Today, he was putting on boots to hike into the woods with a glowing-eyed alien in his hoodie to find her crashed spaceship. Wild how fast normal can shift, right?
The snow outside had settled into a soft white blanket, quiet and undisturbed, the kind that looks peaceful but hides everything underneath it. As Jake stepped outside with Lara beside him, breath curling in the freezing air, he felt it, that gut-deep awareness that something was different now, like the air itself had weight. And not just because of the snow. Lara moved with purpose. Her steps were light but deliberate, focused. Jake followed her, a few paces behind, crunching through the untouched path between trees, doing his best not to sound like a lost moose. "Are we close?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She nodded once. "Approximately 3 clicks from impact site." Jake blinked. "I don't know what a click is." She didn't slow down. "You'll feel it before you see it." And she was right, because the deeper they moved into the woods, the more the air changed. Not colder, quieter. That eerie, unnatural silence, like the forest itself was holding its breath. You ever feel watched but can't explain why? Yeah, that. Jake glanced at Lara. She was scanning everything. The treetops, the ground, the branches overhead. Her tail was coiled tight, a sure sign she was tense, even if her face stayed calm. He swallowed hard. "Do you always look this serious before breakfast?" She didn't answer. That's when he knew. Something was wrong. Suddenly, she stopped. Arm out. One word. "Stop!" Jake froze mid-step. Her posture shifted instantly. Shoulders squared, eyes narrowed, body lowered just slightly like she was ready to pounce. She listened. Jake barely dared to breathe. The snow around them muffled everything, which only made the silence louder. He followed her gaze, scanning the trees. Nothing. Just snow and pine and movement. Just for a second. A flicker of shadow. Too fast. Too smooth. Jake's heart leapt into his throat. "Did you?" "We're not alone," she said, voice low but firm. There it was, confirmation, that creeping, cold certainty. This wasn't just a retrieval mission anymore. This was surveillance. They were being watched. Jake's mind raced. Was it a wild animal? Another alien? Something that brought Lara down in the first place? What did they want? Were they armed? Were they the reason her ship crashed? So many questions, zero answers. But Lara's expression said everything he needed to know. She wasn't surprised. Jake took a slow step closer to her. "Do you think it's them?" She didn't look at him. "I don't know yet, but whoever or whatever it is, it's tracking us. Not attacking. Not yet." Somehow that didn't make Jake feel better. He looked around again, trying to make sense of it, of how fast everything had escalated. Yesterday, he was a guy with a space heater and half a frozen pizza. Today, he might be walking into a forest ambush, protected only by an alien who technically owes him 2 life debts and has a very casual relationship with sacred cultural rituals. Honestly, not the weirdest part of his week. "Okay," Jake whispered. So, what's the plan?" Lara's eyes narrowed on the spot where the movement had been. "We proceed, carefully. We retrieve what's left of my ship and assess if the data core is intact." Jake nodded slowly. "And if it's not? Then we improvise." Not the most comforting answer, but he appreciated the honesty. They stood in silence for a moment longer, the trees swaying gently above them, casting long shadows across the snow. And that's when it hit Jake. He wasn't scared just for himself.
He was scared for her. Because Lara wasn't just a mystery anymore. She wasn't some lost visitor with glowing eyes and a complicated sense of humor. She was a person. Someone who mattered. Who felt things deeply, even if she didn't always show it. Someone who looked at a slice of pizza like it was a revelation and promised to protect him because she meant it. Jake clenched his jaw, trying to stay focused. If something was out there, if someone had brought her ship down on purpose, he wasn't letting her face it alone. Whatever this was, he was in it now. And somewhere, just beyond the trees, the truth was waiting, wrapped in metal, buried in snow, and maybe, just maybe, not the only thing watching them.
Sometimes, life doesn't fall apart all at once. It tilts. Shifts just enough that you look up one day and realize the world's no longer what it used to be, that you're no longer who you were. For Jake, that shift started with a knock on the door during a snowstorm. And by the end of it, yeah, he wasn't just some guy with a couch and a space heater anymore. Now he was, somehow, a temporary guardian of a half-frozen alien woman with glowing gold eyes, a tail, and sarcasm sharp enough to slice pizza. He was also, maybe, technically married under a cultural custom he didn't understand after sharing a water bottle. Oh, and as of yesterday, he had a personal bodyguard who happened to be a trained off-world warrior bound by an ancient alien debt system. So, yeah, things had escalated. And the weirdest part? He didn't hate it. Because under the layers of absurdity, under the pizza-fueled spiritual awakenings and near-catastrophic cuddle for survival situations, something about Laravel clicked. Not in the cheesy, rom-com, love-at-first-sight way, but in a, oh, this person challenges me in every possible way, and I kind of love it way. You ever feel that? When someone steps into your life, completely unexpected, and disrupts your entire rhythm, but somehow it feels right? Unsettling, sure, but real. That was her. Jake had gone from sleeping through snow days to worrying about interstellar sabotage, from scrolling through memes to quietly wondering who or what might be tracking the woman sleeping in her hoodie on the couch. She'd let him in on pieces of her world, bits of tradition, shards of language, casual comments that hinted at battles fought in places he couldn't even imagine. But there were things she didn't say too. The way she paused before answering questions, the flicker of guardedness in her eyes whenever he asked about her ship or whoever might have brought it down. She wasn't just hiding, she was running. And Jake, by opening the door that night, had become part of whatever she was running from. There's a strange sort of clarity in that. When you realize the story you thought you were living, your life, your routines, your little world, was only one version of reality. And maybe there's another version, a bigger one where you're not just reacting, but choosing to be part of something that scares you, because it matters. Jake wasn't the guy who went looking for adventure, but it had found him anyway, wrapped in a thermal blanket, asking for help, eating pizza like it was religion. Now he had to decide, was he going to stay in his lane or follow this strange, incredible person into whatever came next? And it wasn't like the universe was giving him time to think it through, because just as things started to settle, they didn't. The morning hike into the woods confirmed what Lara had feared. Her ship hadn't just malfunctioned. Something, someone, had brought it down. And they weren't alone out there. Jake saw it with his own eyes, a shadow moving where no shadow should have been, a presence that made his instincts scream even before Lara spoke a word. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not even close. And yet, despite the dread crawling under his skin, despite the realization that this was so much bigger than he had ever imagined, he felt a strange sense of resolution. Not bravery, not heroism, just clarity. Because when you've held someone through hypothermia, deleted their Tinder profile before they caused a cultural incident, and nearly passed out after being told your casual water bottle sip might have signaled eternal devotion, you're in it. Heart first, logic second. And as Lara stood beside him, scanning the tree line, her posture alert and ready, he didn't feel like he was babysitting some galactic tourist anymore. He felt like they were in it together. There's a line I love. I think it's from an old book, maybe a movie. Something like, "The end of the world isn't the end of everything, just the end of everything you knew." For Jake, the world he knew had ended the moment he opened that door. Now the story was just beginning. Because somewhere out there in the woods, beneath the snow, beneath the silence, was the wreckage of a ship. Proof that someone didn't want Lara Vin to make it to Earth alive. And they might not be finished. So, yeah, Jake wasn't just a guy with a couch anymore. He was part of a mystery, a mission, a bond, maybe even a war. But at least, he wasn't facing it alone. Not anymore.